Hello, it's Brad Laurie, and today we're talking with the CEO of Quant Network. His name is Gilbert Verdian, and he's here to give you an update on all things quant of late. Gil, thank you very much for your time today.
Brad, thank you so much. It's great to be here again. Loved the previous discussions and look forward to this one.
Likewise, mate. Now, you don't mince your words. You get straight to the point. So let's do that. Now, Gil, there's been a lot happen of late. I want to really focus on the tech first. Overledger is the buzzword for your whole outfit, operating system for the future. Tell us a bit about exactly what Overledger is all about, Gil.
Yeah, absolutely. So Overledger is an agnostic platform, which is an operating system. It sits on top of existing blockchains and future blockchains, and it is the only solution, that technology that solves interoperability properly.
Okay,
We've connected.
Big claim. Let's start with that. Now, you're saying it's the only solution to solve interoperability. We hear that overused in every sense last year. So, Gil, tell us how you can make that claim.
Yeah, so we've spent a great deal of time doing research to figure out what's the right way to scale, to build this to be acceptable to enterprise without adding extra overhead and to be internet scale. And so what we did is we're sitting on top of different blockchains, allowing any-to-any blockchain connectivity, which not many people can do technically, and doing it without any extra overhead. So we're not adding a blockchain on top of another blockchain, which some similar projects are looking to solve with.
Sure.
And we're not limiting the connectivity on how you connect. It's any-to-any.
Right, and you make it sound easy. Clearly it's not. Your team has been growing, have been following that along. 3 lines of code, Gil. A lot of people think that's just a buzz statement. Talk us through what that actually means.
Yeah, so what we did, we set out on the challenges for enterprise and to use blockchain in general. So we from our experience and knowing, clients and users in the market, the barrier to use blockchain technology is just too high. Mm-hmm. And so we looked at it, and we understand that the technical limitations, interoperability limitations, and DLTs specifically are limited. The infrastructure to create blockchains and use blockchains and host them and run them is extremely complicated. And in a way, it really opens you up to security risk. If you're opening up peer-to-peer networks in your corporate perimeter, that is not acceptable to any security department in an organization.
Right. So just to jump in there, Gil, for a moment.
Yep.
Are you saying that the idea of just having that one public blockchain that does all on-chain is not the way? And in fact, doing it the way you're doing it is much more efficient. It's also much more performant. And more importantly, it utilizes the best of blockchain, but isn't one itself.
Yeah, absolutely. The infrastructure approach and running nodes is really not acceptable to enterprise, and it is just the complexity and the risks that it carries. And if you remember back in the day, peer-to-peer networks, when they first came out with Napster, that was really one of the first ones, and then BitTorrent, the first version of BitTorrent, not the current
version. You mentioned that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So these applications came out, and everyone within corporate security teams was out there trying to, identify the protocols and block them on firewalls, because it opened up a PC within a corporate environment to be a node and accessible to anyone across the whole peer-to-peer network that could span the world.
Right.
So it introduced risk, and it kind of introduced a backdoor into your enterprise, and we as a security function, we had to block that type of connectivity.
Sure, and it's important to add there that security, sorry to interrupt, but you are a security specialist. For those who aren't aware of Gil's background, that is exactly his engineering experience as well. So he comes with a lot of years of experience in top level positions. Now, Gil, we talked about the operating system in the sense of Overledger. You're literally the overlay system that really makes the best of blockchain function in a way that's real and for business. So let's go with that as well. Why enterprise? Why is that so important?
Yeah, so we set out on the mission. We recognized blockchain quite early on. 2008, 2009 is when I introduced it to the government when I was working for the government in the UK, and I really liked the potential of the technology, and we had to get it out of this experimental mode. And I guess the first stage for that was to really establish and found the ISO standard for blockchain. So this is TC 307. So I did that in 2015. And the idea behind that was to create a way where we can have a mass collaboration to work on the technology at an international level. And that's what's happened. So now we've got 53 countries working together to standardize blockchain across the world. And that includes organizations, startups, government, enterprise, academia, everyone. And so we set out to then bring it up into the mainstream. By standardizing the technology, we then built the platform. And so working on the ISO standards, we then built Overledger following that. And the whole idea is to bring the mass adoption of blockchain the same way the internet really took off. 93, if you remember, it was one of those years when the internet was opened up in 92. Before that, it was a research network. No one could use it unless you're a government, military, and universities. So 93 was right at the beginning where people saw it. They thought the potential was high. And then they started making web pages, and they didn't know why. They were just doing, just the web. Sure. And then it eventually took off. And so that's kind of where we are. But it took off because business adopted the web, and they used it to deliver services like e-commerce, like email, like directory services, looking up phone numbers to contact the company you're interested in.
Sure.
So when the business adoption happened was when the mass mainstream adoption happened. So we're taking that similar approach with blockchain, getting businesses to adopt it to become mainstream.
And Gil, it's interesting you say, because you use the word web, and there's also terms used as layer zero solutions. Now, in that sense, in many respects, that's what you are, given that you really build upon the TCP/IP concept. But when I say layer zero solution, I'm talking about you provide a facility that is essentially catering for all of these platforms, not just enterprise, but really any user who wants to utilize for the betterment of their business.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole idea of what we set out was to solve that challenge, that difficulty of getting started with blockchain, and we simplified the security challenges, the infrastructure challenges, the node challenges, the code, the support, the running and maintenance, and we just abstracted all of that into a single API call, which we call our BPI, our blockchain programming interface.
Right, and that harps back to the 3 lines of code as well. The simplicity of it.
Yeah, all you do is you don't need teams, you don't need specialist skills, blockchain experts, you don't need programmers who know the special languages that each blockchain has, and you don't need multiple teams to support the multiple blockchains. All you need is someone who knows Java or JavaScript and can add 3 lines of code to their application. Through Overledger, they've got access to all the blockchains.
Sure.
So it's
Yeah, I agree with you. Sorry to interrupt, but is that the killer app itself? The functionality of the seamlessness and the ease. Is that really the killer? Because you said before, it really is the enterprise that's the imperative. That sector must adopt this for this to flourish in the mainstream for usership. So is the 3 lines of code and its ease the real key?
Yeah, that is the unique simplicity of what we've done, which just makes running blockchain and running applications easy, and enterprises love it.
Sure. Now, while many different startups are talking a bunch of BS, is it fair to say that there's too much crypto focus and not enough on this real value of blockchain as a mechanism for facilitating business, rather than it be the end all that does everything as they claim?
Yeah, if you break it down, it's the trust engine, it's the trust discussion that people have talked about. But what it really comes down to is businesses are coming up with new business models to create new revenue streams, new products, new innovation by being able to trust third parties they couldn't before. And by doing that, then they've got a whole new market which they never had. And so a lot of organizations are exploring blockchain for the business opportunity, and not just the technical. I mean, the crypto stuff is an application of blockchain, and that's good. It's worked. But that's evolving in parallel. But businesses are using the technology to become more competitive, to become more innovative, but also be more efficient. So they're implementing the technology internally to simplify a lot of complex internal processes.
Sure, and they're the ones obviously you want to associate with, rather than those that are just simply using it as a mechanism to gain cash, fundamentally. Yeah. Right, got it. Now let's talk about some of the other things, such as customization. It's a big buzzword, or a big feature of the map system that you've built in with the operating system. Now, why is customization so important? Why, as if I was a business, why would I benefit by having that feature?
Yeah, because if you don't, then you pick one particular blockchain and you have the features of that one blockchain, and then you're kind of stuck. And so we met a bank, which won't name yet. So
please name. I'm ready for this, Gil. Go for it.
We're Q1. It's Q1.
Q1.
We're naming all our clients, and you'll see.
It's Q1 now, Gil.
It's February.
Okay, got it.
So we met a bank, and they said, look, we are pro blockchain. We've been in the news. We've done a lot of stuff that's been public. 2 years ago, we picked Hyperledger, and that was the right choice for us. But 2 years later, it's actually not anymore because it doesn't meet some requirements. And so the problem they've got is because they went with a particular technology, they're stuck, and they can't migrate and turn off that service because there's people using it. There's a live service being delivered. So they're adding Overledger to give them the features they never had, so they can use Hyperledger plus Ripple plus Ethereum plus Quorum.
That's so interesting you say that. Let's explore this a little bit now, Gil. So you mentioned banks. I know that you're talking to a lot of different banks, and they're big banks universally. Yep. I'm not here to FOMO, but it's just going to happen because you're talking at the highest level with these enterprises. Banks are well known around the world as some of the most powerful entities on the planet. So, Gil, do you see yourself as a mainstay protocol or a mainstay system that can be onboarded to these institutions, that are a global force? Do you really see that happening?
Yeah, no, it is already happening. So the clients that we work with, they love the technology because they can just get started in as little as 8 minutes is what we put out there, but it's less than that. So what they love is they're able to take what they're doing internally, add Overledger to it, use our gateways or have their own. So the banks can have their own gateways. BankX can have overledger.bankx.com, whatever it is. Yep. And they can then start using multiple blockchains today.
Wow. So Gil, let's take it in a real context. I've just arrived to your office. We're scheduled, and I want to know exactly what I can do. I'm a big bank. How does it work out? How does this unfold in the discussion? What kinds of things do you actually say?
Yeah, it really depends where they are. So there's really three types of clients. So they're the ones that are considering blockchain. That's the first type. There's the ones that are in pilot or want to do a pilot, and they're looking at different technologies. And then there's the third ones that are already live with blockchain. So they're the type of clients we like to talk to and work with. So the ones that are considering blockchain, we tell them to use Overledger because it gives them a safe environment to be able to try the different blockchains, do the experiments in a safe sandbox, and try all the different types of blockchains until you find the right one. Mm-hmm. And that's quite important because right now they don't know what blockchain they need. And it's very difficult if they don't have Overledger to do that because they have to try one, stop, start again, try the next one, stop. It's very disruptive.
That's a really good point. So you can use the best of all the blockchains out there that you guys think are credible and usable, but you don't have to be one yourself. So it's quite a unique proposition, and I would imagine that a lot of the ones you select really value what you do because they indirectly and directly benefit from that.
Yeah, and it's all about what they're trying to solve, what do they need from the features of different blockchains, and how Overledger makes that real. I mean, it enables them to do that. And if they're in pilot, then we give them a better chance of success. So they've got blockchain one, they're doing experiments and they're trying to make it work in the proof of concept. But then they find, it's getting a bit slow, the nodes are falling down, things are getting a bit difficult. Then they can try the same experiment on blockchain two and continue the pilot. So it gives them a better chance of success.
So essentially, Gil, just to jump in, so we're really reinforcing this, is that you're that proprietary tech. You're literally that patented and backed by several patents. People can't go and just simply use your code. And you're enabling for that cross-chain interoperability as your core asset so that, we've heard many different companies who've tried to onboard into a blockchain have problems and then have the stress of having to get to another one. You're relaying that problem literally for all of these onboarding applications as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you have our SDK, you've got the 3 lines of code, you can just add 3 blockchains or 6 blockchains or 1 blockchain to it, and to the code. It's just in the one line, and then you start using the other chains. It's
Sure.
really that easy. And,
so, Gil, why aren't you even more known globally, not just in the crypto sector, but in the mainstream sector? Because a lot of your business is not in the crypto scene.
Yeah, we operate mainly in the enterprise space and in government, and so a lot of the clients we work with don't publicly go out and talk about what they're doing because they don't want their competitors to know. And so that's just the nature of technology. You're not going to go and say you've got the latest and greatest, fastest engine in your car for the competitor to go and buy the same engine, and then they can compete against you. So we've been working very, I mean, we have, to state 70 deals in our pipeline with different clients, huge multinationals globally, not just in Europe.
Wow.
Not in
Let's stop you there. 70, did you say?
Yeah, 70.
And they're in the pipeline that are unsigned as yet, aside from all the ones you already have.
Yeah, so exactly. So they're customers. We're meeting, progressing, giving them the technology, doing the proofs of concept, working with what they're trying to solve, and working with them to and the approach we're taking is we're giving them a very easy to digest, kind of like a small sandbox of Overledger, so they can just try it out within their enterprise. They've got a limited window to use the technology. And then once it works with their use case, then it becomes the enterprise version for them. So it's a really easy implementation into an organization.
I really appreciate your frankness on this as well, Gil. Dropping the number of 70, it's a big deal. It's a big number, considering that you don't talk with the small players, not at this stage. So give us some hints though, Gil. I know you can't because of NDAs and everything, but give us some hints of the kind of scope, of these 70.
Yeah. Well, okay. We are working with a company in the healthcare space, and so they're looking at digital clinical trials. What
other verticals, Gil? Because we talked about healthcare before, and you're big on that. You have a lot of experience. That's a huge sector. Pharmaceuticals are massive. What about other verticals? Other than banking, even, because that's another big one that you really hit the mark on.
Yeah, so we're very focused on financial services and healthcare, and then our other bucket is communications, so telcos.
That's
we're in quite a few discussions, and it's really the link between blockchain, IoT, 5G, and enabling a connected world to operate and interoperate, and that's quite hard to do with legacy technology, but blockchain is a good way to do it.
Sure, and there's also initiatives now that are blockchain centric that are using things like VPN, even Zoom, all kinds of different telco systems. I won't press you anymore on that one, Gil, because I know that that was a tough question, but I do really want to find out more as the NDAs become sort of removed, and you can start to talk about these things. 70 is a lot. I'm looking forward to finding out more. We might even talk about more of this in the interview later. I'll press you. But the vision, what essentially is the vision though with regard to the devs, the enterprise? Clearly they're different components. The devs matter too. What's the overall plan?
So we're allowing, as we said, the enterprise to adopt blockchain technology at scale, and that's quite key. But we're also giving our developers and the community the same opportunity, and so they can create the next generation multi-chain application that will take on the world, and we want them to do it. We want developers, excuse me, to come up with new applications that are cross-sector, that are for consumers, for enterprise, for business, whatever it is, and they can publish that, and they can actually create these, the next WhatsApp, the next Telegram, the next Facebook, whatever they do. Yeah.
And Gil, why would they do that, mate? Why would they do that? Are they incentivized to do that? Because fundamentally, we hear the narrative of open source, open protocols. You're a little different. You are proprietary. You are for profit. So how does the dev benefit by utilizing your system?
Yeah, so we give them technology that you can't have anywhere. Really having access to all the different blockchains gives you a new market, because if you develop a dApp on Ethereum, only Ethereum users can use it. And so you're limiting yourself to particular networks. And so what we're doing is we're kind of democratizing that, allowing any application to work across any network across the internet, pretty much. So this is the beauty of multi-chain applications. You can serve them to the whole internet community, and you've got billions of users, straight away. And so what we're doing is giving developers the features and the technology to create a new generation of application that takes all the features of different blockchains, combines them, and allows you to do something that was just never possible.
Sure.
And so we've demonstrated quite a few things of what's possible, and we really like that because it helps inspire people. And so we've created, the decentralized Amazon, we've created the decentralized search, we've put the World Wide Web on blockchain. We've done all these things that are pretty much impossible a couple of years ago, but through the technology that we've built, it's there.
And Gil, we've seen those in the testnet phase or in those experimental phases. Now, I want to just get cut to the chase. Are you really just that web technology? Are you that glue? We've talked about that analogy, but you really do seem to be that, in that we all want to see some sort of technology flourish, become that underlying server technology and service. Is that you? Are you the web?
Yeah, we call it the Internet of Trust. So it's the next evolution of the internet, and so we want to be the underlying technology that delivers that across all platforms, across all types of users.
Sure, and so it's already happening.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen; it's happening now.
Yeah, we've kind of accelerated the release of that. We weren't planning on doing that until 5 years' time, but we had a technological breakthrough, and Colin, the CTO, he just came up with a fast track way to do it over a weekend, and then we put it into the labs and built it, and it worked. So
over a weekend, Gil. I mean, every company right now is trying to do what you've done in over a weekend. Conversation. It sounds really interesting, though, that it seems so easy, but once again, it was years in the making. Now, mate, let's talk a little bit more on the applications. The maps that are currently existent. I read recently you have 3. Has that number changed?
3 our applications?
Yes, of your maps that are currently running.
Yeah. So we have more. So I mean, we have a whole bunch of different types of applications. So Overledger on its own, we have the base version. We have Overledger Health, which is the operating system specifically for health. Mm-hmm. We have Go Verify. That has been migrated to Overledger, and they'll be released in the coming weeks as a map. We've got the distributed search, which runs on Overledger, so that's being released as well. So that's going to be a separate product. You can think of it as a distributed Google, and then we've got Sentry, which is around KYC and analytics and AML and that sort of compliance stuff. And we can release that as a separate product. It's already built, but it's for enterprise customers as well. So,
so Gil, are some of these maps your own as well? That's important to distinguish in terms of.
So these are just ours. So that's what we've built. But we have a community of, I think it was an organization, 84 organizations last time I checked, that are registered developers of Overledger. And out of those ones, some of them are quite large companies who are building applications for their customers. Sure. And so we're seeing a lot of new maps in production, in progress, and stuff being built, but it's developers doing it. It's not
right. Now, Gil, to keep the integrity of your system, though, obviously you need a process to ensure quality control. Colin's really good at that kind of stuff as leading the tech team. How are you going to ensure that you protect the interests of Quant as all of these different institutions and developing communities want to utilize your proprietary tech?
Yeah, so I mean, think of us as an Apple. You can't just go and create stuff on Apple's ecosystem and expect it to be okay. It has to meet some guidelines, some quality control criteria, and security. And so we've built that into pretty much everything. So everything's got security by design. We have the architecture is so complex that if you try and build some bad tech, it will fail. I mean, you can't abuse the platform and abuse the system.
Right. It's funny you say that, Gil. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but you talk about you can't just simply copy, but have people try. No doubt you're watching for these copycats. that are trying to utilize your code. That's why you have those patents. And they are, since we talked last time, they are globally enforceable. So talk us through, that aspect.
Yeah, so we don't publish a majority of our code. I mean, the stuff that's in GitHub is just the open source bits. There's the SDKs, the connectors, and then some stuff around example maps, and they're all public and open source. It's in our GitHub, but yeah, the way Windows and the kernel in Windows is the secret source of Microsoft, and no one accesses that. We have the same approach. So
sure.
The back end of Overledger is never published.
And Gil, I really want to talk to you about that. We often see coders trying to analyze the blockchain. Nothing wrong with it. It's really helpful for those people who are advocates for transparency. But in your respect, the narrative of decentralization just doesn't stand up. And I want to talk about that. Is that even a bad thing? Because you do protect such a large part of your code.
Yeah, so we didn't set out to go and decentralize the world. I mean, we're not creating another blockchain for everyone to run a node and do consensus and that sort of thing. What we're doing is to bring mass adoption to all blockchains. And so, there's multiple ways to tackle it. And the way we're doing it is providing, a multi-gateway to the different blockchains that anyone can connect into and create new applications. So, you can look at our code, it's all open source, but no one's going to look at our operating system kernel and the way the microservices are all architected. So
I think it's really important because a lot of times the code quality or the so-called analysis of code is sold to the public, and in many respects it's just not simply going to be there for some of these really prominent and enterprise-centric platforms such as you. Now let's move to subscription, Gil. Now you are a for-profit, you want money for the team, you want to be here in a decade and beyond without any BS. That's just the reality. But to do that, you need money. The subscription model is complicated. Let's start with enterprise and let's break that down.
Yep, no problem. No, so we just released, I think it was last week, we released we don't call it tokenomics because it doesn't give economics a justice, but we call it token utility. Okay. So our token utility model is really based around enterprise and the open source community developers. For enterprise, the way we've done it is they're both linked and they're both powered by Quant. So in terms of the tokens, so enterprise need to hold Quant tokens. They need to pay the enterprise development license. So if you think about what Apple is doing, and we haven't done pricing yet, so pricing is closer to the release of the Treasury. And
that I wish you had it, because a lot of people in the community really want to know that whole structure, that pricing structure. Yeah. But can you tell us why you haven't done that?
Yeah, so pricing, it's not going to be public for enterprise. I mean, every enterprise has their own deal. Like in software, you don't know what Shell have paid Oracle license fees. You don't know what Sony paid.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't know though, Gil. Shouldn't we have more transparency? Shouldn't there be more of an open sort of discussion about that? If in fact some of them could get better deals, that's why I'm asking you.
No, then we won't have any customers.
Okay, can you talk us through that so people can understand?
Yeah, so the way enterprise software works, I mean, every vendor provides their enterprise customer specific licensing costs, and it's all contractual and it's all confidential. So if they give, let's just say, take those two examples. So if Shell gets a deal from Oracle and they're paying, I don't know, £1 million a year in license fees for Oracle database, and then Oracle goes and talks to their competitor, which is BP, and then BP wants a deal, and Oracle wants to charge them, £2 million because they're bigger, or it's more complex, or they've got more servers. Oracle would not want BP to know what Shell got, and Shell would not tell BP what they got in terms of deal, because it's proprietary commercial information.
Right.
So enterprises compete. They don't talk to each other. So if you're a third party vendor and you go out and publish your pricing list to the internet,
they won't touch you.
You will not have any customers. No.
Well, thank you so much for clarifying that, because a lot of people, obviously including myself, we're still learning about how all of this enterprise system works. Now, Gil, the other issue, no doubt, with the pricing would also be the customization feature, because everything's going to be based on that negotiation, I would assume.
Yeah, for enterprise it is, but we will publish our community pricing. So people who want to build Overledger and what the development license cost is going to be per year, how much transaction fees are going to be for those types of
Okay, so that we can look forward to that, I would imagine, soon.
Yeah, that will be public, similar to Apple. I mean, you pay £99 and you're a developer. You get Xcode, you get all the stuff around it, and you know it's published, right? That's what it is.
Well, that's really good to know. So let's go back to the enterprise and let's talk about how you put these segments in place for different fees and subscriptions.
Yeah, so enterprise, they need an enterprise development license, and so that's really determined on the type of applications that they're going to use Overledger for. So we can charge them by volume, by number of employees, which is number of seats within enterprise, and then they can do like number of transactions. So that's kind of usually the three types, and most software companies do it that way. Oracle, IBM, SAP, you know, they all charge with those methods. So we're using the same enterprise charging model.
Okay.
And then that allows them to you know, build and create technology on Overledger, and then they need to pay the transaction fees on top. So the transaction fees, it's the amount of read and write they do, and it could be unlimited, so they can pay an unlimited license. It could be by volume, and they could do prepay, they can do pay as you go, they can do arrears. So I've used like Amazon, you know, you use 1 gigabyte a month for your web hosting, you pay 1 gigabyte of data. You know, that's the volume you use. So it's a similar approach. And then we've got a platform fee, which they pay as well. So this is all around powering the ecosystem for enterprise with Quant, with the token. And so we for the platform fee, we handle, and the Treasury functionality in there handles all that complexity.
And that's a really big point. I'm going to go to that.
Yeah.
Gil, don't worry, I promise.
Yeah.
But let's stay with the subscription system first. Now, with regard to the enterprise, there's also some other aspects to it. But the one part is that you don't have that incentivization mechanism like you do with the devs. Is that right?
Incentivization in what way? Sorry, for monetizing.
Yeah, in the sense that, as we're talking about with the Quant token, you really use that for the developers, and I'll talk about that with regard to trying to really build out the value of the token for them. You incentivize, you know, innovation, but there isn't quite the same system for the enterprise in that respect.
No, it is. So with enterprise, so the Treasury function handles that conversion of their fees from fiat into Quant, and the Treasury buys that for enterprise. So we don't want the extra steps for enterprise to go and create accounts on exchanges and do all these complex things. We'll handle that on their behalf, just to simplify the usage of the platform. But it's all powered by Quant tokens. So they just like developers need the same developers licenses and Quant and transactions, and it's just the Treasury does it for them.
Sure. And I want to talk about the Treasury in a moment, but Gil, talk us through why they would do it. This is something that's really important, I think, to understand in terms of people say in this space, why add the extra layer of complexity when it comes to business transactions with the token itself? We've talked about this before, because you technically could use fiat. There's no reason why you couldn't between the enterprise and yourselves. So why do you need to have this particular, as I would say, a key? You know, the key being this voucher, this redeemable voucher, to really fire the engine of the operating system.
Yeah, so the key is their license to use the OS and Overledger and to transact through it, and so they can't not have Quant tokens. It just won't work. And so for enterprise, they need Quant tokens to, you know, power the transactions and what they use. But what we've done is, instead of them going and buying each time, oh, I need 10 from here, 10 from there, and 100 from there, we let the Treasury do that on their behalf. So they're paying. It's a conversion of, let's just say, £1,000, and that's the cost. So that's the fee they have to pay. But then the Treasury function takes that and converts it into Quant and buys the Quant for them.
Sure. Now, Gil, that Treasury, we might as well talk about this a bit more. That Treasury really is the intermediary. That's that killer intermediary that you must have to make it easy for businesses with no headache to deal with the fiat. You can send it across to you, and you do the conversion. As you said, they're the handler, as the Treasury internal handler, not an external one.
Yeah. So think of it as a foreign exchange conversion. You want another currency, and you give them your credit card, and then they give you the other currency. So the Treasury converts the platform fee for enterprise into Quant, and it's really to take away the friction. There's no way in the world you can get the head of procurement or someone in accounts or finance to go and create a Binance account, do some KYC, go buy some tokens and cryptocurrency and whatever, and then record that on their asset books in a ledger in the accounting system.
Sure.
Enterprise does not understand that.
And what's interesting is it is internal. As we're talking about, Gil, it's not something you're outsourcing, which is never as appealing when you are such a serious company. Now, Gil, let's talk about the developer benefits with regard to, once again, that structure.
Yeah. So similar. It's a similar model to enterprise. Developers need a developer license, and they can pay for that, and they get whitelisted as a developer on the platform. So their wallets and the Quant tokens in there, they're basically are whitelisted to sign applications, and because you can sign the multi-chain applications you're developing, you can run those on Overledger. So it's very important to understand you can't just create maps without Quant tokens and without being a developer. You need to be whitelisted into the system,
right?
And then,
so that's important, because I read a quote of yours somewhere in the notes, and it was that you really must have that. Like, it's not a case of
absolutely. Yeah, okay. If you don't have that, you can't. And so what we're working out for the Treasury function for developers is if they're paying £99 as the annual fee, they pay that in Quant tokens. We can again use the automation in Treasury to handle this. So we can actually lock their tokens in a smart contract for 12 months, and then the annual fee expires after that, and then they have to renew it. Or we can take the tokens, the £99 equivalent tokens, put in as Treasury and just hold them, or we can just you sell them, and so right. you've paid for your license, so it goes into Treasury. You've sold it back to the ecosystem.
Sure.
And so and then that's a way to get your licenses to start, and then you can pay your transaction fees as well in Quant. So similarly, you can pay as you go, you can pay in arrears, you can pay prepay, pay monthly, or like a one-off. It's a similar model. So we're working on that, on the pricing. Mm-hmm. And then developers can monetize. So if you are a developer and you've created the next WhatsApp, and you've got millions of users and they're downloading it, and you've got lots of transactions and volume going through it, you want to make some money from that to benefit from all your user base, so you can charge all your users £1 a month.
Right, and that's where I was getting to, Gil, before, actually. And my apologies for not being clear, because I wasn't suggesting that they are incentivized by that monetization, which really is the most important part for them, because they have to have a reason beyond just the benefits of the protocol or the code to benefit their own business, because they are essentially trying to do businesses as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can create the next WhatsApp and publish that to all the users of all the different blockchains in one go. So you're not limited to one blockchain. You can put it on the web. You can have the whole internet using your multi-chain applications, right. And then you've got billions of users. So
it makes a lot of sense, Gil. Now let's talk about the pegging to fiat. This was quite direct. You made this really clear. You're not going down the narrative of stable coins or of trying to be something you're not. You want to use the current currencies of the day. Is that, in any way a conflict of interest, given that you stand for blockchain centric or blockchain based business?
No, we're just allowing the frictionless commerce that people need to transact in the traditional sense and in the new world, and so we're giving them the choice to pay in fiat, and then it gets converted into Quant, as I said in the platform fee example, or they can just pay fiat, and if they're happy with that, or they can pay in crypto.
Right. Okay. So they can pay in crypto as well. Now let's talk about that with regard to what they can use. Now that's a big innovation that you have, because you have very specific partners when it comes to cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, so I mean, we demoed this in the d-commerce, the Amazon app that we made with the motorbike, if you remember from the previous one. Yeah, so we allowed anyone to buy, a virtual motorbike for whatever it was, 1 Bitcoin, I think, with the price, but they could have paid in Ripple, Bitcoin, and Ethereum, and so we're giving them the choice, and so for us, it's no different. We've connected to those blockchains, and it's up to the developer to decide how they want to be paid, how they want to charge, and how they pay for their fees as well.
Right. So Gil, let's be bold. So if you're utilizing some of these mainstream cryptocurrencies, they are essentially a functionality of a currency, an e-currency of the day. Is it fair to say that that's their core asset as well? Because we hear the narrative of SOV and gold all the time. But if you're using them in that way, what's your position on this?
Yeah, there's a big differentiator between currencies and digital assets. And Bitcoin is a great digital currency. It's been around for a while, and it will be around for a while. So it's massively adopted, massively used. There'll be others, but I think what's happening is we had a digital revolution. We've been digitizing the world, and that led to e-commerce, led to the internet, and where we are today. And now we're having a tokenization revolution. So we're actually tokenizing assets that were non-digital into digital tokens. And so if you think about it, security tokens, that sort of thing, it's evolving. But what we're heading to is an ability to take something that's physical, break it into smaller chunks of tokens that's digitized and tokenized, and then being able to trade those tokens that represent the assets.
Right.
And so financial services is shifting to a more digital tokenized world rather than just a digital world.
So is it your position in that respect that some of these early entrant currencies that are upholding the integrity of the potential for universal transactions peer-to-peer, is it your position that these ones that you're currently onboarding are the ones that are really going to support that, or are you really not sure and you're just going to allow for?
No, we don't know. I mean, it's kind of like, what's the most dominant, currency? It's the US dollar, followed by the euro, followed by the yen, and it may change tomorrow. It could be the euro first, followed by, I don't know, Zimbabwean dollars. It changes. Yeah.
So right now, the whole volatility factor isn't really that important to Quant, because you can onboard different ones as we evolve.
Yeah, we're agnostic. We're like an interchange that can interconnect and use current, future, different types of currencies and assets. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, Gil, because you incentivize all of these onboarding digital assets / cryptocurrencies to really ensure they improve their scalability, because you certainly won't be onboarding those that can't, because they won't be able to keep up.
Yeah, we actually, if you flip the reverse, and we've connected 6-7 blockchains today, and so we've done Hyperledger, Ethereum, Ripple, JP Morgan Quorum. We've done IOTA, and
that's the private one.
Mm-hmm. And so we've connected the ones that are mainly used in terms of market share, but there's others that need to benefit from Overledger, because what we do is if you're a smaller, unknown blockchain and you want to have access to more users, if you connect to Overledger, then you've got all of a sudden access to all the Ethereum users. And so if you flip it, people need us a bit more than they thought, because we open up new markets for them. Yes,
again, harks back to that web glue. You really just open up those gateways for all of them. They must all really appreciate what you do. Now, let's talk a little bit more about some of the economic concerns. You mentioned it's all about token redesign. Now, you currently are correlating with the FINMA guidelines. You're directly involved with the EU as well. So Talk us through that first. Compliance measures, what's happening globally with regard to making sure that you're following the laws of the day.
Yeah, so we love compliance and we love regulation. I think it really brings assurance that people need to really adopt this technology. And so Switzerland was one of the first to be very specific in terms of what they see as a payment token, a utility token, an asset-backed token, and they had the clear definitions. And so we said out right at the beginning to comply to regulatory standards, mainly because my background is from regulator and working in Bank of England and Treasury and government, and I know the thinking around market risk and what they want to protect citizens' rights and to protect the market. And so we did this, from the outset as a compliant utility token, and that's been the case.
Right.
But what we're seeing now is other regulators are picking up on that, and they're starting to define their interpretation. So Malta's done the same. Singapore did a paper which was similar to the Switzerland one. And I saw the FCA in the UK did one about 2 weeks ago defining cryptocurrencies, but it wasn't a guideline yet because it's a consultation first.
But so it was positive with regard to utility.
Positive. Yeah, and saying it's out of our jurisdiction, we don't need to supervise it, and it's very clear. So these things are good, and what happens within the regulatory space is if a few regulators agree on the same position, then there's harmonization. And so all regulators would say, well, we just adopt that approach because they've done all the thinking, and then they have kind of like a passporting to harmonize between regulators. So you can actually have an exempt, unsupervised digital asset, which could be utility or something, and then other regulators will recognize it. So it just helps.
I need to jump in there because that must be hugely important for you, with essentially parts of the world starting to light up. It's not completely done yet, and one of them that isn't is the US. It's the largest market arguably in the world. Now, talk us through that. Do you think that they're going to follow suit? Because right now the SEC and the CFTC, they rule the world. They decide what's a commodity, what's not. They are reasonably lenient right now, but they're still not ahead of the game.
Yeah, they've been playing catch up, and they've really gone down the enforcement side using, the Howey test from the 1930s because that's what the law allows them, right? And that they don't have the right tools in their armory to regulate the modern digital world as yet, but the government is changing regulation to be a bit specific and keep up with what we're doing today.
So Gil, let's talk about that once they do. Once the rest of the system lights up, which I'm assuming you would agree will, what are the implications for Quant Network then? Because you were recently in the US. Let's talk about what that could mean for you.
Yeah, so I mean, not just us, but people who operate within regulatory guidelines and compliance, that it opens up new markets. But it's only relevant if a US citizen wants to buy an issued token. And so when you go and do an ICO or similar, and you want to sell to a US citizen, you can't today because of the regulatory restrictions. But if you're under compliance within existing regulation and the US recognizes they have reciprocity, then basically they can take a regulated a non-regulated token from another jurisdiction, because it doesn't need to be, because it's just a utility.
I'm reading between the lines. So you're saying right now you can still do business with the US completely legally using the right processes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we have US clients. I mean, it's only when you issue an offering which can fall under a security, which is the issue.
Right. Okay. So let's just go there now, then, Gil. You've got partners all around the world. You've got business interests. How is it going in the US? Because you were there recently.
Yeah, we were. So we had a really good, solid. We were there for I think like 3 days or something. So we had a few meetings lined up, and then through introductions we kind of doubled all those meetings, and we were just back to back for 3 days almost.
Right.
So very, we went to the US in May last year to understand the market and look at the appetite of what our technology can bring to that market. Excuse me. And last year we found the market wasn't ready. The regulators weren't ready. The appetite wasn't there. The environment just wasn't right.
Okay.
But going there again this year, especially in New York, we found it to be absolutely spot on. And so what we've decided is we're going to open up and expand into the US, and that's a corporate strategy we're doing. We've got some big players that are going to be part of that expansion.
Like who?
I can't say. We will make the announcement within the next week.
Okay. Wow, that's going to be cool to hear about.
Yeah, so once we do all the paperwork, we will be able to announce what that means. But in essence, we plan to be there by the summer and have a Quant Network office and deliver our services to customers in the US.
So Gil, is this just the beginning for you? I mean, you know a lot about Australia, it's interesting over the sector as well. Is the world your oyster, given that you really are one of those very first companies doing anything even remotely like this, and successfully with revenue as well?
Yeah, as I said, we've been quite strategic in the approach and executing what we're doing in a very controlled way. Get the tech out, make sure it's right, it solves the problems that people have. Then talk to the customers and show them the technology, then get customers, create the ecosystem, get developers, build the portal. So we've been doing things in a sequence, all in line with our strategy. And so now that we've done that and we're creating that ecosystem, now it's up to clients to use it. So
sure. So when does the franchise for Quant Network happen? When do we start to see, much like banks, the Quant emerge, I suppose, from the back end rather, in different regions of the world? Really?
I think in the next year we'll have more people on the ground in the offices where we have client engagements with.
Right.
And so we have our, as everyone knows, the London and Swiss office. We've got the office in Australia, and now we're looking at the US next. So we'll have more people in those offices, just filling up and meeting the clients that are talking to us.
Right. And what about Asia? Looking at that market as well, Japan?
Not yet. We're taking it in sequence, but it definitely. I mean, Australia can service APAC from there, but we need more people to be able to do that.
Yes. Okay. Well, hopefully, we'll hear more about those expansions, and particularly with regard to your team as well, Gil. Do you have the funds to currently, given that you are already for profit and making money, is the team expanding right now? Can you afford more people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've always been hiring just throughout the last year, so we've always been adding people to the team. From where we are, we need to expand out and hire a few more in the London, Swiss, Europe offices. So we've got a plan to do that, and then same for Australia, just to deliver what we've got to the customers, and then the US. So we really need to, from our estimations, just double for next year. So for this year, for 2019, and that's what we're planning to.
Right, and you're on target with all of the previous milestones and benchmarks you wanted to hit?
Yeah, we've been ahead of schedule. I mean, all the stuff that we set out, we'll release this and do that. We've all done it, either right on time or mostly before. So we are on schedule to meet all the milestones that we've set out.
Well, congratulations for achieving that. That's not an easy, that is a feat in itself. Now let's pull it back again to that Treasury. I did say that we wanted to go deep into this. There's some concerns with the Treasury, Gil, with regard to exactly how it's going to be structured so people can understand their supply. There's some concerns there with regard to circulating and total supply. Talk us through what your plan is with the token itself. There's suggestions that you're going to change this.
No, we can't change. I mean, the token, we did the token generation event, and that's final. I mean, we can't make any more Quant tokens. There's, I think, 14.4, I think the number is in total in circulation.
Yep.
And that's it. That's all it'll ever be.
So it's a finite number, a finite resource. It's not going to change.
No. We won't add or create new tokens. No, we can't.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about now the token model itself. You know, you referenced before, we don't like to use the word tokenomics. So is there a plan to change the token system and the structure?
No, so what we've set out in the first version of the token utility paper is pretty much the foundation of what we're doing. I mean, the only thing to evolve from that is the public pricing and what that means, and then the mechanism of automating how that works within the Treasury function, and so that should be it. So the model, the utility model, isn't going to change. I mean, that's what we've spent. I think I mentioned that we had a crack team looking at this, everything from lawyers to economists, and we really had to come up with a model that's flexible and works for our developers and works for enterprise. And you know, there's no easy way to do this. This is all new, and
Right.
So what we've come up with is what we think works, and we're going to put this out and use it in the real world, and monitor it and measure it and see how it's working, and then we have options to adjust, tweak a few things and help, just build that ecosystem around it. So
right, and obviously you'll update the community through the different channels as you employ these different modifications.
Yeah.
So Gil, just to clarify, is there no dual token system coming at the moment? There's no suggestion of that? So
the current model is what powers Overledger, from developers, the licensing, the transactions that go through it, etc. So that's given, that's published. So we've had a lot of brainstorming on what do we do with scaling this globally, and this is where our multi-cloud strategy comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And so Overledger is currently hosted by us or customers. So you can use our public versions, which are right now in AWS. They can be on multiple clouds, including AU Cloud, UK Cloud, and others. So what we want is eventually a mesh of hundreds of Overledger networks, Overledger gateways that create a huge public network into all the blockchains.
Okay.
And so the whole idea is similar to the internet. Is when you go to a server, the internet finds the shortest path and the quickest path to get there,
mm-hmm.
and that's called OSPF, open short path. And the way that works is it just it finds the hops to reach the destination. And so we've taken that same concept. So when you want to access all the blockchains, you go to the closest one. So if you're in Japan, you hit the Japanese gateway. If you're in Australia, you hit the Australian gateway. You don't go from the Japanese gateway to the one in Antarctica because it's slow.
The one in England.
Yeah, the one in the UK. Yeah, exactly. So we need Overledger to expand out, and all the gateways to expand out, so people have multiple ways to access all the blockchains.
So how does that relate to the token? It's token plan, though, Gil.
Yeah, so what we've thought of is this dual utility approach where we have our own gateways, and we will have a multi-cloud approach to this across the major cloud providers, and there's more coming. So we're onboarding and going online with those very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But then if someone wants to create their own gateway, you can host it yourself. And so this is what we're thinking. You can take Overledger as a black box. You can put it on if you've got lots of bandwidth, lots of server space, you can host Overledger yourself as its own gateway. And the dual utility approach is, how do we incentivize people to host and pay for the data, pay for the uptime, the storage and compute, to then benefit from the volume that goes through their gateway.
So Gil, I want to say two things on that. Firstly, it's not yet set in stone. That's really important for people to know. And secondly, it's not going to affect the current utility token model.
Absolutely. That's completely separate. This is a secondary thing that we thought of, what else can we do? And it's something we're looking at the second half of the year. So
Gil, what's your experience though in enterprise? Sorry to interrupt, mate, but do you think it was a good idea to put that information out to the public when it's really not yet finite and decided?
Yeah, I think so, because it's exciting. I mean, it's a new world, and we're collaborating and we're listening to our community, we're listening to feedback, and so we're being very open in everything we're doing. And we'd love the ideas that people are coming up with and looking at, well, how do we incorporate that to benefit, people?
Right. So just to be clear, it is really just at that boardroom phase.
Yeah. So this is a concept that, we think would work, and we're exploring it for the second half of this year. Mm-hmm. The model is there in, on whiteboards, and it won't be published until we try it out. So yeah, it's still being developed.
Okay, well, thanks for that information. So there's a heads up on all of that potential for this additional feature of token design. Now, let's talk a little bit more about some of the big business that you've already set up. You have some with AU Cloud, Alliance Block Crowds, Mobi, Interopen as well. What are they all about, Gil? Are they big players? Are they important? What are they doing to help build your whole ecosystem out?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we also have Accord. We're part of the Accord project to bring multi-chain smart contracts, which we call treaty contracts, mm-hmm. to the ecosystem. We're also part of the Global Legal Blockchain Consortium, so GLBC. That's one. We were also asked to join the Retail Blockchain Consortium a couple of weeks ago. So we're exploring that, and we will. Mobi is a new one which helps us deliver this technology for autonomous vehicles, IoT devices, etc. And so what we like to do is work with peers and colleagues in a space, whatever they operate in, to enable them to benefit from our technology and to enable them to solve these problems, which are very difficult today. And without Overledger, they'll take years to figure out. And so we're fast tracking that adoption of blockchain for all these consortium. But it just means we're also fast tracking the use of Overledger as well. So the more people, like Mobi is made up of BMW, Siemens, Renault, I don't know, all
big names, Gil. All of these things, big names.
Huge companies, yeah, and they are trying to solve particular issues with blockchain, which they just can't with single blockchains. And right. When they look at our technology,
and Gil, to be frank, once again, sorry to interrupt, but they are also not wanting the headache of having to build the technology. They want you or someone like you, I would imagine, because you've done it, and it's seamless, it's easy. They can afford it. Clearly, they've got revenue themselves. So really. Yep. The potential for this arguably is really beyond measure.
Yeah, it's for us, it's a way to bring that mass adoption vision that we've got. How do we get everyone to benefit from blockchain technology? And if they choose to use Overledger to go multi-chain, then that's great. That works better for them. So
Gil, are you that busy right now with the team that you don't need to go out and seek business, because some of the others are doing that? Are you getting more of the other experience where they all are coming to you?
Yeah, the team are at maximum. We're out meeting customers and calls 24 hours a day now. So, we've got a few tomorrow night, it's all around the world. So, we've been in a good place to show real value, and people love that because, we're not just creating.
Well, Gil, let's talk money for a second again. I really want to go here. We just have to. We're in a speculative market. We're in that pre-utility sort of era where everyone is skimming, taking the cream from the crop, sometimes with value. It's even happening probably with your own token. It's on the market. But, what I did want to talk to you about more importantly, which really is the point of value, is how can people really ensure the correlation between your utility token and the growth of your ecosystem, because that is often coupled. The problem of coupling with BTC and ETH, you don't have that problem. So how can people essentially look at you as that pre-utility now, or you're actually a utility, my apologies, because you're doing stuff, and expect return? And I know that's a tough question because it implies security, but it's just how it is.
Yeah, we're not playing that. Compliance. We're not playing in that security space. But one thing that we think we've really solved with the technology and the model around it is we've solved utility to scale. And so for us, the adoption of Overledger will just increase the number of users. And it's kind of like any platform. The more users you have, the more customers you have. The more customers you have, the more
so basic economics
you can sell to them. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Facebook is not going to be worth whatever billion if they have 100 customers, but if they have 3 billion users every day logging onto Facebook, then they're going to be worth a lot more money. So it really is around supply demand, and our approach is to get this technology out to enterprises to scale out and use Overledger to solve the use cases, which drives that demand, for licenses.
It sounds so simple, yet so practical and so logical, because your big focus, as you said, and this is what sets you apart, having spoken to so many different companies, Gil, is the fact you're utility now, 2019, and it's just the beginning. So few can actually say that because they're working towards that proof of utility. So can you give us some proof though? Is there going to be some sort of publications or demonstrations of the kind of negotiations and partnerships you already do, so we know that you're actually interacting with the token with these enterprises?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the way the clients that will talk about us, they will. I mean, we'll publish that, and it'll be all press releases and broadcast and whatever. That's definite. But then what we want to do is similar to like Amazon. How many users do they have? How many enterprises use Amazon? We're going to have dashboards to show how much volume goes, through Overledger, how many blockchains are connected, what's the throughput between different blockchains. So we're going to have metrics where people can actually see the live service.
Right. So that's where the value of transparency will come through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same for any current cloud platform takes that same approach. So yeah, we'll do that.
Awesome. Now, Gil, exchanges, a lot of talk right now, a lot of posts on Twitter, a lot of announcements on Telegram from you guys. There's a lot. So I'm just going to quickly go through them. You've got Fat BTC, Hotbit, IDEX, Bittrex, a well-known one, Delta Direct, new ones, IDAX and Digifinex. There's a lot there, Gil. So talk us through that. Exchanges, you must be, happy that this is all getting momentum.
Yeah, so we set out to do this in a staged way. We didn't want to just go exchanges like everyone else, and so the approach was to eventually be on 2 top 10 exchanges, and we've done that. So we've done that with Digifinex and IDAX, and I think the number 4 and number 10, I think last time I checked. And then we wanted to have some extra features. So Bittrex was a good one from the transparency perspective. One of the most reputable, and so there's extra pairs that people can trade. Hotbit and we did not list on those. They just did it on their own, and so the ones that we are actively on are Bittrex, IDEX, IDAX, Digifinex, and the rest are decentralized or they've done on their own. And so our approach is quite limited because we don't want to just be on every single exchange. So we feel it's the right model, and we've got potentially one more that got in touch with us, and
are they in the top 10?
They're in the top 10, yeah, and we're just again going through the process.
Now, Gil, I want to talk to you about in the context of other, plays we've seen in the market. We've seen launch pads exist where it's really designed to literally launch the value as well, because of the issue of liquid markets right now. Very few exchanges do have significant volume. So in that respect, a lot of these are using one specific platform to really launch their value, but we often see speculation that's rife, or there's interest from the pre-sales of these, and then they tend to not do so well after a period of time. So in that respect, did you also try and acknowledge all of these different risks inbound with the speculative market by being so sequential, so long-term focused in the way in which you engage with exchanges?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't want to go on exchanges at all. I mean, that was 2018. It was only at the end of the year when we got our legal clearance and everything, started happening after that. So it's been very controlled and phased, and we didn't want to go on any exchanges until we had a product. And so we didn't do anything until really September.
And Gil, do you think that's the problem? A lot of these companies, some say the word shitcoin, but what I think many of them really mean is shit startups. Some of them just aren't there or won't be, and some of them just are not shit, but they're not ready. So there's all these different types. but fundamentally, utility that should be the driver.
The adoption should be the driver. So, you know, if you are creating a new product, whatever it is, and you go to an enterprise customer and all you've got is a PowerPoint, then you don't have a chance of converting that into any business. I mean, they're just like, yeah, that's nice. It's a nice PowerPoint, but come back to us when it's ready. So I guess people have taken, you know, a different approach. You really should focus on the products, get it out, and then
much respect for taking the hard line and not getting out there until you've got something internally proven, and not just a probabilistic proven protocol, but actually something proven in enterprise. Now, with regard to volume, there's not a lot of volume out there yet of you. You're reasonably unknown in the space. Circulating supply, as we've talked about, nearly 10 million. Total supply, just over 14 mil. Current 24-hour volume on CMCs, just over a million, or 1,200,000. So not a lot really even now still know about you.
Yeah, and that's, you know, we've only just started. I mean, if you look at the business, we really opened up the gates to Overledger and launched the SDKs around September and then November over the next one. And so before that, we were busy helping build the tech, evolving the tech, you know, getting different versions out and making it real. And so now that it's real, you know, for us, we're out there and we're just starting to explain to everyone what we're doing in the right way, because we've got real physical, tangible, you know.
Sure. Now, Gil, given that you're on exchanges, you see a lot of narratives of TA analysis and sentiment analysis, and then there's the FA, obviously. But as you start to emerge, you know, in enterprise markets, is it fair to say that some of these studies of the TA particularly are going to become a little bit less relevant because the growth is going to clearly correlate with the enterprise, and without knowing that, which no one really can, they're not going to really know exactly how this is going to play out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot easier to sign an enterprise customer that brings, you know, 1 million users to a platform than trying to get 1 million users separately on one by one. And so we've taken that scalable, broad approach by signing up as many enterprise customers as we can with, you know, lots and lots of users. Right.
Okay. Now, obviously Q1, really exciting time for you. Is there anything that you're most excited about as, you know, we start to really see you emerge as a force in enterprise utilizing these technologies?
Yeah, a lot of real world implementations and uses of Overledger that solve something that everyone, you know, is using and you know, Overledger is going to be powering that, and that's quite exciting because, you know, at the end of the day, Overledger is going to be one of those technologies that helps power the world. It might power driverless vehicles. It might power, I don't know, transactions, payments, whatever people start using it for, and they don't know about it. And it's the same as, you know, your laptop, your you know, IoT device. It's powered by Linux. You know, you don't know how Linux works. You don't know the kernel, and you just know that you can send, you know, a video image in real time to someone else. So
right, what matters is the map. You know, you've got the map beneath, you know, beneath the map, and so in that respect, they'll know about the maps. They may not know about you.
Exactly. So what people want is that application. You know, I want to send, you know, something in a decentralized way, an image to my friends, and it's powered by Overledger, right? And so that's where we're heading, and it's going to be exciting because we're going to start seeing, you know, this year especially is going to be exciting for us because there'll be real world uses. Yeah,
big year. Now, hackathons, you're involved heavily in those this year as well. You're all about supporting the community, especially the developer community. Talk us through that as well, Gil. What's the plan?
Yeah, so you know, we wanted to build the tech and get it out, and that was the plan and the approach for last year. Now that it's out, you know, we've already got an event in 2 weeks in London. So we're doing an event with 101 ways, and I think we've only got 60 spaces for that. And it's a way on how to develop a map, a multi-chain application with Overledger from scratch. So our team will be running that, showing you and teaching, you know, developers on how to do it. And then that's the first one in Feb, and then in March we're attending the ADC, the Australian decentralized, sorry, ADC forum, I think it's called.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll look for it and try and put it in the description below as well.
Yeah, so it's in Adelaide in March, and so we're going to be the tech for the hackathon there, and so people would have. It's really aimed at government and enterprises, so they have use cases and problems. They come to the hackathon and say, "I want to solve this, like identity. I want to solve supply chain," and then people can sign up and build using Overledger to solve that problem. So that's going to be the next hackathon in March.
Mm-hmm.
And then following that, we're talking to Techstars to then take this globally. Once people see how easy it is to use blockchain with Overledger with just 3 lines of code, there's really no barriers to create some, innovative applications.
Sure. Now, Gil, what about marketing? You talk about, all of these things you're doing, and it's almost like you infer that because of the enterprise-centric approach you're taking, that the mainstream will just sort of flourish. Do you think that you need to engage more in mainstream marketing, or is that just not necessary right now?
No, we do, and last year we didn't as much. That wasn't a huge focus of ours to go and market and do gimmicky stuff, and we didn't. And we focused on the tech, and we got that out. So now that we have real world use cases, real world clients, we're hiring a marketing lead. We actually have an interview this week for three candidates, and we've got agencies, we've got content specialists that do particular things, video editors, animators. So we're hiring all these different types of people for the different work that's being done in the background to get this out. And right. So our not objections, sorry, our aspirations are to be front and center with Accenture, IBM, and Overledger is the next thinking that people.
Sure. Now, as we say as Aussies, you're not here to muck around, mate. You're here as the real deal, and you want to be a force to be reckoned with. Now, what about interoperability of other startups? Now, I don't mean just blockchain. In Europe, I have to say some have impressed me personally so far. Based on the way in which they've generated revenue. So I'm going to name some names. For example, the Own Network, also Unibright. They both have stated clearly that they are able to produce revenue. That is of interest, I think, to many people trying to understand the real value of some of these. Are you planning on engaging, Gil, with any of these in any way or any other, without trying to FOMO that, but just be real?
Yeah, we love startups, and we go to the events and talk to other startups, and we're partnering with lots of startups as well. So we've already, excuse me, announced the partnership with Crowds. So Crowds are doing a lot in the trade finance space, paying for invoices, which is what their platform is on. They're adding Overledger to their platform and giving their customers choice and interoperability, which they never had before. So that's a startup working with big banks, on day one, and so we like
really support other startups.
We like supporting, yeah, absolutely. And Alliance Block is another one which is really around STOs and having an ecosystem to launch STOs and do that in a safe way.
So you're pro STO.
We're pro startup, so that's what they do. That's Alliance Blocks.
But in the sense of, do you see STOs as relevant?
You know what? I don't know. I think it comes back to the regulation. If it's compliant and the regulators sign off on it, then yeah, it's a securitized asset.
Sure, and it's exciting to see, again, more and more of these startups that you're supporting emerge, and clearly you're doing your due diligence on them. Now, I have some community questions as well coming from the Telegram, so I'd like to plug the Eye of Quant because they have a Telegram that are actively trying to support you as well, Gil, and your team. And I also want to acknowledge any of the other Telegrams that are not the official ones, but really trying to have discussions that aren't just always about price, which is always a good thing. Now, when they wanted to ask about locations in the world where you're doing things, one is in Spain, in one area called Alastria, and another area in Armenia. Are they relevant to some of the things you're doing?
Yeah, so we love our community. I mean, we have, as you said, Eye of Quant. We've got the admins like Luke, and then we've got, the dedicated, community members. I don't know, Sonic.
They do a great job. Sonics. They're all very active.
Yeah, Guido
They all
Guido
do.
does all the memes and photos and stuff. You know, just talented. So they all work really well together, and they just have a nice community feel where new people come in and they help answer questions, educate them. You know, people trying to scam something that's quickly shut down. So it's just a nice place. I mean, I've seen other communities where it's just vile. I mean, you just don't want to even set foot in that space.
So you really just have, once again, you have a good team of those social in the social domain with people who really do care more than just the price. Price.
Yeah, and I have to say we've got a new site that was launched called Quant Unofficial, which was by one of our community members. So it's quantunofficial.com. It just got launched today, and it's brilliant. It just summarizes the AMAs, partnerships, resources, etc. And this was put together by someone named Comfy. And he's just a great guy.
Great plug.
We met him.
Nice work. It's almost like you prepped this, but that's not the intention. And I also want to make this really clear as well for all those listeners. This is genuinely not about trying to FOMO. This is about trying to afford leaders in the space, CEOs in the space, a platform to really explain what they're doing in the real world of business. So you cannot avoid it in the speculative market to have this effect. The reality is if you're good, you're good. And we're going to watch and see just, how good you're going to be or in the future, Gil. But once again, let's move back across to Armenia. Let's move across to Alastria. Questions and regions.
Yeah, so Alastria is an interesting one because we're actually adding the Alastria blockchain, which is mainly for Spain, to Overledger. So there's one of the things that's tied to the EU stuff that we're working on. Alastria is just another blockchain that's built on Ethereum, and we're onboarding that as we speak. So we're quite excited. What we're doing in Armenia, we're setting up a research center there as a collaborative thing with the university, and it's to build an ecosystem, but to help us solve some of the research problems that we have. And we're inventing new things every day, and so we need innovative guys and girls who know how to think differently, think laterally, to come up with the solutions that we need and build that into Overledger. So that's going to be based in Armenia. So we're doing that for this year.
Right, so really focused also on that educational side, building out the academics, building out the validity, the veracity, and the respect in that academic sphere. I think that's really important as you evolve in the next few years. Are you also going to use that as a pilot for other universities or for other educational institutions?
Yeah, so I mean that's the start of the thinking. We already are partnered with UCL in London, so we did our research with them, since 2017. We're partners. We're part of the ecosystem, but separately, we want to expand that, and so we've got a really good relationship. Why can't we have all the students at UCL use Overledger as part of their curriculum?
Or the University of Sydney, or the University of Stanford, or Berkeley, or Harvard. Why not?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you look back, Apple tackled this in the same way. They provided the technology and gave easy access to students at university, doing graphics, doing design, all the arts, and they left university and they went into the corporate world, and they still wanted to take Apple with them, and so that's how Apple, penetrated IBM's market share of PCs, because people grew up with them.
Right. Well, Gil, we've talked about a lot. I want to finish off by saying that there are reports by CVVC or PwC suggesting that you are going to be in the top 50 before you even know it. So, mate, on that note, I want to say thank you very much for your time. I know how busy you are. It's extremely hard to get you online, so thank you for that. Is there anything you want to say, though, Gil, with regard to the things you're most passionate about for the Quant Network for the upcoming, let's say, half year?
Yeah, I mean, we're just excited to deliver, and what we love is setting a tough challenge, working our butts off to meet it, and achieving things that are really hard to do, and we just love the feedback and the engagement that we're getting from the community and the support. But we're here to make this scale, and there'll be more Overledger coming out more announcements, more technology, more surprises.
You're a very professional person. I respect you. Once again, Gil, I wish you all the very best. I hope I have pressed you on some of those questions. That is the intention. I want to make that clear also. And I also would like to say this, because I rarely do. I did invest in Quant Network, and I did that with my own money in October. So for those who are wondering, I did that. And once again, I did that because of my own due diligence. I encourage all of you to do the same, because this is a speculative market, and this is about all trying to understand more about what is blockchain, how does it fit into business. What you've done, Gil, today is explain your story, your narrative, and what you're doing, and I appreciate that very much. Mate, I'd love a chance to speak with you in the future also, simply because I'd like to know more about how you're unfolding as an ecosystem and as an enterprise.
No, absolutely, Brad. Thank you very much for your dedication, and love the questions. I think they're very useful, and it's what people need to hear, and you represent the people. You're the voice of the people, so thank you. Appreciate your
No worries, mate. Thank you so much for your time, Gil, and we'll talk soon.
Great, thank you.